of the rattan chairs. Not to think, never to think. She knew it was impossible, but she'd come anyway. The sunroom had been Emily's favorite room in the whole house. Once this room had held a life-size giraffe, easels, paints, brushes, a blackboard and pastel chalks, a television, a pink polka-dotted sleeping bag with the name Emily embroidered across the front in huge white silky letters. An oversized toy box, also with the name Emily stenciled on it, was stuffed with animals and assorted toys. Deep, comfortable furniture suitable for a sickly little girl had been covered in all the colors of the rainbow, just waiting for her to sit or lie down with her storybooks. Once, a long time ago, 100 years ago, a lifetime ago, this had been Emily's favorite room, before she had become bedridden. Tears puddled up in Sarah Bess Windsor's eyes. Why had she come in here? She looked around for her coffee cup. She reached for it and sipped the cold brew. Okay. She'd had some coffee. Now it was time to leave. But could she walk out of this room today? Of course she could. She had to. Sarah Bess looked at herself in the mirror that hung on the back of the door leading into a small lavatory. She'd taken exceptional pains with her dress. She was wearing her grandmother's pearls, her mother's pearl earrings, and a mint-green linen dress that so far was unwrinkled. If she sat down, it would wrinkle. She wanted to look put together when Rifkin Forrest arrived, and part of that put-together look did not include tears. Every silky gray hair was in place. Her makeup was flawless. Her unshed tears hadn't destroyed her mascara. Just because she was 60 didn't mean she had to look 60. The last time he'd been to the house, Riff had told her she didn't look a day over 50. Riff always said kind things. Riff said kind things because he'd loved her forever. Sarah Bess turned around at the door, seeing the sunroom as it was. Other than the gallery of pictures, all traces of Emily were gone. Now the room held rattan furniture covered with a bright-colored fabric. Dozens of green plants and young trees could be seen through the wall-to-wall windows. Overhead, 2 paddle fans whirred softly. A wet bar sat in one corner. She was the only one who ever came into this room. Once a year on this date, she unlocked the door, walked into the room, and allowed herself 10 minutes to grieve. Most times she cried for the rest of the day. For weeks afterward, she wasn't herself. Still, she put herself through it because she didn't want to forget. As if a mother could ever forget the death of her child. Sarah Bess closed and locked the door. Maybe she would never go into the room again. Maybe she should think about moving away. But she did not see how she could. Emily was buried here in the family mausoleum. She could never leave her firstborn. Why did she even think it was a possibility? Then there was Mitzi Granger lurking on the fringe of her life. Even if Riff couldn't do anything about squirrely Mitzi, something had to be done about Mitzi. The Windsors had lived on Windsor Hill in Crestwood, South Carolina for hundreds of years. She was the last of the Windsors, though only by marriage. Then again, maybe she wasn't the last of the Windsors. She would have to wait for time to give her an answer. As the mistress of Windsor Hill walked down the hallway toward the heavy beveled glass front door, she realized she'd left her coffee cup in the sunroom. Well, it would have to stay there for another year, or until she felt brave enough to unlock the door and enter the room that was simply too full of memories. At the end of the hallway, she opened the door and walked out onto the veranda. She looked around as though seeing it for the very first time. She was surprised to see that the gardener had hung the giant ferns, cleaned the wicker furniture, laid down new fiber rugs, and arranged the clay pots of colorful petunias and geraniums. Even the 6 paddle fans had been cleaned and waxed. How was it possible she hadn't noticed? Because she was so wrapped up in herself, that was why. She tried to remember the last time she'd sat out here with a glass of lemonade. When she couldn't come up with any answer, she started to pace the long veranda, which wrapped around the entire house. Where was Rifkin? She looked down at her diamond-studded watch. He was 10 minutes late. Riff was never late. Never. She wondered if his lateness was an omen of things to come. For the first time since getting up, she was aware of the golden